Welcome back. 17 News has released its first true crime podcast, A Man with a Thousand Faces.
Yeah, in the podcast, 17's Olivia LaVoice interviews convicted murderer Jamie Osuna in jail. And during her interview, Jamie discusses what has gone on in his mind and his thoughts about murder. And joining us this morning to further explain this is Dr. Corey Gonzales, here to explain, what this, how this all develops. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We want to stress this podcast is not glorifying Jamie Osuna in any ways. It's actually going into the issue that is stemmed from childhood and in looking back at abuse and psychological issues from such an early age. As you have looked into this podcast, listened to this podcast, what are some of the things that have struck you?
Well, what is stand out to me is that there's several variables that contribute. We're not making excuses for this behavior, right? There's no excuse in this despicable behavior, but what we're trying to do is understand the variables. And for me, there's a few things. One of them is that we had a blended family where a father did not accept the stepchild, and there was severe abuse, which could have led to head trauma as well, traumatic brain injury. Also, you have the issue of just broken empathy and emotional abuse from this situation. So you see physical abuse, emotional abuse, and then you have someone that has broken empathy, poor social skills, impulsivity, ends up getting arousal from other people's suffering. There's so much abuse, he becomes obsessive and obsessed with this suffering issue. So it's really important to treat this stuff at an early age. If you go into adolescence and not treat this stuff, it can become a part of the persona. These things are very rare. But the ones we do see, like Richard Ramirez, Charles Manson, John Wayne Gacy, and Jamie Osuna, you see these factors involved. So it's important that we treat this stuff with empathy training, social skills and so forth, impulse control.
Which brings us to the point, treating it as a child, are there things that we should be looking for? Are there early childhood warnings? There
certainly are, Tabitha. Some of the things you look for is if you find there's a lot of aggression toward people, toward animals, there's destruction of property, fire setting, if you see that they're stealing, if there's breaking the rules a lot, there's bullying, lack of remorse, lack of empathy, those are signs that you need to get this child some help.
What do you say to parents though who say, oh, they're just kids, they want to break some of the rules?
Well, there's pushing the boundaries, but with these things are more extreme cases. If you see cruelty to animals, that's not okay. If you see fire setting, destruction of property, using weapons, cutting, those are signs of this problem.
And of course, you're just talking about how, with Jamie Osuna's case, this is the extreme that we're talking about. But, and again, the reason why we have this podcast is to kind of go in and look at all of these things and look how it's all been tied together. Now, when we talk about some of the signs that you should look out for, the other question is this treatable? I mean, what can you do? What can a parent do? Someone who may know of a child who may be aggressive, may be showing signs of aggression. What are some of the things that you can do to treat this?
Well, early on, before adolescence, before this all sinks into the personality development is important. Early treatment's always important in all these disorders. But getting some empathy training, some social skills, impulse control is really important. Otherwise, if you don't address these things pre-adolescent, by the time they get into adolescence and adulthood, it's really too late, and you're just looking to manage them. As an adult, a lot of times you see people that cheat, steal, use aliases, con others for personal gain. Again, lack of remorse, lack of empathy, so they're not going to make healthy attachments with people because they don't have the capacity to do that. The empathy has been broken. So it's very important to get this stuff early on. If there's abuse going on and this child is acting out, you certainly want to address that and make sure they're safe from that as well.
All right, Dr. Corey Gonzales, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
And we also want to remind you that you can listen to the podcast, A Man with a Thousand Faces, by going to our website, kgat.com. You can also go to thousandfacepodcast.com in order to learn on how to download that podcast and listen for free.